Why do people with complex trauma find it so difficult to ask for help, even though they're drowning? This has become known as one of our characteristics of complex trauma, which is people with complex trauma have this deep fear of being a burden or a pain. So let me explain where that comes from and how it still carries on today. If you look at a child in a healthy home, what that child begins to realize is that their needs matter just as much as everybody else's, and that love means that we mutually work to make sure that each other's needs are met. And there will be times of sacrifice, times where I might give more than you, but there'll be times where you give more than me. And so it ends up kind of 50-50, give and take. And that's just what love means, is that your needs matter to me just as much as my needs matter to me. In a complex trauma family, though, you usually have somebody in the position of authority who has narcissistic tendencies. They might not be a pure narcissist, but they have narcissistic tendencies, which simply means that they are operating by that their needs matter a bit more than everybody else's, that they're going to get their way, they're the boss, they're going to do what they want to do. And so that imbalance is there. Now, at first, when they have a child, they love the child because the child fills them with love, makes them look good, everybody gives them extra attention. But after a while, they begin to realize this child has a lot of needs and they can't meet their own needs yet. This child takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of time, a lot of attention, and they begin to resent that child a little bit. And so they begin to communicate in subtle or not so subtle ways, messages that says to the child that they're selfish for having needs, that they're a burden, that they're an annoyance, that they're a pain, and the child begins to get that. And so it creates two issues for the child. Number one, shame. Number two, guilt, false guilt. So shame is basically the child begins to feel, I am a burden. If people see the authentic me, they're going to find that I'm too much. And that core belief then goes with them into adult life. But secondly, false guilt, a mistrained conscience that says that love means you make yourself smaller, that you don't have needs, that to express needs is to be unloving. And that shapes the child so that every time they feel a need or express a need, they immediately feel guilty. So let me just expand on kind of the things that might have contributed to that if you went through them growing up. So you might have had a parent that if you asked for something, you were immediately told you were being selfish. Or you might have had a parent that if you asked for something, they sighed or they rolled their eyes. Or you might have had a parent who was sick or depressed chronically. And so everything you asked did require extra sacrifice. So you always felt like a burden to them. Or you might have had a workaholic parent who was always busy, always stressed out, never had time for you. And so you always felt like you're an inconvenience, and they were exasperated if you needed anything because they were always at the end of their rope because of the stress of work. Or you might have had a parent who was so focused on looking good, their image, that to have a needy child who was asking for things or crying made them look bad. And so they would communicate to you that you were being bad for doing those things. Or sometimes you'd have a parent who got all of their validation by taking care of all the kids in the neighborhood, but they didn't have time for their own kids and you felt like a burden to them. Or you had a parent who they relied on you for emotional support. You had to be the strong one. You had to take care of their emotions and their needs. And so if you had a need, you just felt like you were a terrible burden to them. Or you had a parent that if you asked for something, all of a sudden they turned it and made it all about themselves. Poor me, you don't appreciate all that I do for you, and on that they would go. Or you had a parent who never tried to understand your needs, never took time to really look at your life and get you. And so to them, every expression of need on your part was almost like a shock or a surprise or definitely an inconvenience. And so some had parents who made them feel invisible, totally unheard, unseen. Others, they made their child a hero. And so they validated them for their marks and how responsible they were. And so that child wasn't allowed to have needs. They had to be strong all the time. And then you had some parents who expected a child to learn everything the first time and to learn it perfectly. And they become very impatient with you if you failed or if it was taking you too long to figure something out. Or you were taught you only needed family. You didn't express needs to other people outside of family. Or you didn't air your dirty laundry. You didn't tell other people about your problems. That was a no-no. Or if you were struggling and expressed a need, then they started crying and started saying how terrible a parent they were. They now became depressed, and you go, oh, I caused their depression. Or you had a single parent, and let's say you had a mom you had 3 or 4 other siblings, and your mom was just exhausted all the time, and you felt like a burden to her. Or you had a parent who was constantly coming up with some new illness, some new problem that they were complaining about to get attention, and so you were never able to express anything. So that's the kind of parent you might have had. Or some children just decided that the way to help their family, because they could see the stress, the tension in the family, all the fighting and dysfunction, the way to help solve those problems was if they had no needs. So they tried to become an invisible child. And that was their solution. Some children had a chronic illness, and they knew that they were a burden on their family. And so they just carried that with them all the time. So hopefully that helps. And let me say very quickly, to heal, you got to deal with the shame. You got to deal with that feeling that you're too much, if that was a lie that was given to you. Then you got to deal with the false guilt and begin to realize, hey, love means my needs matter just as much as everybody else. To love a person means they care about my needs but just as much as their own. I'm going to operate by that new belief system because my conscience was mistrained. But I know that as soon as I express my needs, it's going to trigger my limbic brain with guilt. But I can switch to my cortex and go, no, the truth is my needs matter. So I am going to ignore my limbic brain and operate out of my cortex. And if you do that, within a few months, it's going to dissipate those guilty feelings that you get. Let me add one final piece here. When you express needs with an unsafe narcissistic person, they're always going to turn it on you and make you feel bad and humiliate you. If you express needs to a safe person, they'll respond well. But to express needs to a safe person, you have to humble yourself. You have to say, hey, I am in need. I'm not competent here to do all of this stuff. I need help. That takes humility. And so what I want you to understand is to do this expressing of needs, to get past this not being a burden or a pain, you need safe people and humility. And both of those are challenges and scary for people with complex trauma.